Welcome everyone to Swimming with Sharks Adventures in Sales Ops. My name is Will Smith and I am your host. Thank you for those of you that are joining us today. We have a great show today. I'm very excited about today's show and we're glad that you are joining us. Please, if you have a moment in the comments, if you're on Facebook or on Twitter, on Periscope, on YouTube, wherever you are, let us know where you're tuning in from so that we can get a good idea of where our people are coming from. If you're checking us out on the replay on our podcast, thank you for listening in, and we appreciate you, and we hope that you listen to us on a regular basis. Today, we are talking to Kyle Jepson, the Senior Inbound Sales Professor from the Hubspot Academy. I'm so excited that he said yes to this interview. We got a great show for you, so let's quit talking about it. Let's get right into it. Today's adventure looks like this. We're going to start with our word of the week. We're going to go back to a little bit of a one-on-one here, or 101, so that we're going to talk about a CTA. And if you're not familiar with the acronym, that is okay. We're going to talk about that. That is today's word of the week. We're then going to spend a lot of quality time with probably one of the favorite, and we're not going to tell the other professors this, but probably one of the more favorite professors, Kyle. And Kyle Jepson, he's the sales professor. And if I could just throw out my opinion there, I think it's because he takes something as complex and difficult as sales, and he makes it easy, and he makes it into a process, and he makes it into something that is repeatable. And so for those of you that have taken any one of his certifications through the Hubspot Academy, you know that it is not only easy, but he has helped a lot of people. And let me tell you, he was very popular when it came to Inbound 2020. I was amazed to be in his session to see how humble he was, because he realized just how popular he was. A lot of people appreciate the work that he does there. So enough about that. We're going to then go into the power play. Then I got a question for you, and then we'll wrap the show up with until next time. And so this week's word of the week, it's CTA. Now, as you know, there are a lot of acronyms out there. A lot of acronyms that happen with marketing, that happen with sales, and sometimes the more experienced folks, they just rattle them off like it's a second language. And when I first got started, I remember thinking, oh my goodness, what are they saying? What are these things? Now, I will tell you this. HubSpot has a fantastic knowledge document about all these different marketing and sales acronyms that are out there, and I will include that in the link with our podcast. I'll also include it with our YouTube broadcast, where you can check it out later. So these are important, but today's acronym is CTA, and that stands for Call to Action. All right, Will, we get it. Yeah, this is Sales 101. But I wanted to take it back to basics, because you could send out a terrific one-to-one email, give all the information that is necessary to help somebody make a purchasing decision. It's just, you know what it's like. You've created a beautiful email, wonderfully written. Your English teacher would be so proud, and the prose is just fantastic. But then there's nothing at the end of that email. And so your client, your customer, your potential client, they're sitting there thinking, what's the next step? Now what should I do? And so a lot of people say, well, just throw in a CTA, but it's more than just the call to action. This is about leadership. And as sales leaders and as people that are helping other people make decisions, there's a leadership aspect here, and that is to lead them to the next step, which is what is so important about having a call to action. Now, a lot of people get very fancy with their calls to action. They might be animated. They might be all sorts of colors. They might be all sorts of things that are just so enticing. But really, when it comes down to it, the call to action, being a leader in that call to action, is really just making it simple. It doesn't have to be overly complex. It could be something as simple as, hey, give me a call if you agree with what I've just told you in this email, or what have you. It could be that simple. And so that's the first part of the CTA we want to keep in mind. Keep your CTAs simple. Give me a call, or reach out to your representative here. Something that says, now that you've read this, now that you've experienced this, what should be the next step? So that's the first thing. Make sure that your CTAs are simple. They don't have to be complex. And the next thing is make sure that they are logical as well. You obviously aren't going to send an email that says, hey, it was great talking with you on the phone for the first time. Now let's sign a contract. You can't go from step 1 all the way up to step 6 without steps 2, 3, 4, and 5 in between. So make sure that it is logical. And so how do we do this? A lot of times we have a lot of knowledge inside and we test it out on our colleagues. We say, hey, what do you think of this? And of course, as somebody who's involved in sales, as somebody who is involved in marketing, they're probably like, oh, hey, yeah, this is great. Let's go ahead. That makes sense. Totally. But I'm going to ask you to go outside when you're testing your CTAs. Go outside your little cocoon or your little bubble of knowledge that are the people in your workspace or on your Zoom calls. Ask your grandmother. Ask a young child. After you read this, what is it? Do you have a niece or a nephew, a son or a daughter? After you read this, what do you think should be the next step, or what should happen next? And if you A/B test it that way, you'll make sure that you have a better CTA. So keeping it simple and keeping it logical so that anyone can understand what the next step is. And that is this week's word of the week, which is CTA. I am a little bit nervous because I'm excited to introduce our next guest, and that is Kyle Jepson. And if you are not familiar with HubSpot, he can explain what HubSpot does, but he is the senior inbound sales professor at HubSpot. And here's a little bit about Kyle. You know, we see him on the HubSpot Academy videos and everything, but here's a little bit more than what you see there. Kyle's wife proposed to him even before they met, and we're going to ask him about that because I can't wait to hear that story. Kyle's videos from the HubSpot Academy have garnered over 2 million views, ladies and gentlemen. So, as I told you before, this gentleman is popular. He's a bishop of a Latter-day Saints congregation in Boston. And this is very interesting. I like this. I don't know why I thought of Abed from Community, maybe because I'm binging it on Hulu right now. But Kyle has written a time travel novel. And yes, if you are a book agent, he is seeking an agent. So he's written a novel on top of all of these wonderful things, on top of being a very successful senior inbound sales professor at HubSpot. Please welcome everyone to the show. I'm going to back up just a little bit to make sure that my camera is all set. Please welcome to the show, Kyle Jepson, everyone. Hey, Kyle, how's it going?
Good. Thanks for having me, Will.
All right. It is good to have you. I hope that we got to hear the applause. I don't know, but if I had people out here, applause to you. Thanks for being here, Kyle. All right. First thing, you got to tell the story about your wife and how she proposed to you even before you guys met. Start with that, please.
Sure. So actually, it occurs to me, maybe for anyone who doesn't know me, this will set some unfair expectations. But when I was in college, I was part of a stand-up comedy club. It was an audition group, and I performed stand-up a few times a year. And my very first weekend of shows performing for an audience, the shows ended, and we had these little 3x5 comment cards at the door of the theater where people could leave feedback. I hated this joke. I love this joke. Give me more of this comedian, whatever. And the advisor of the club said, Kyle, go clean up the comment cards. And I went and I found them all in a nice, neat little stack. And the one on top said, Kyle Jepson, will you marry me? XOXO Heart Katie, and had a phone number. And I thought for sure that it was a prank that these bunch of comedians were playing on the new guy. But no, it's totally real. I called her and left her a voicemail, and she called me back, and we met up at Jamba Juice on campus and just sat and talked for like 4 hours and started dating almost immediately. So, and now we are married. We have 3 kids. And that is the story.
Oh, that is fantastic. I love that story. That is a great story. Comedy troupe. I wouldn't have guessed that. That's good. That is good to know. So for the people that are out there that don't know what HubSpot is, tell us what HubSpot is, what the Academy does. What do you do, Kyle? Give us some information.
Sure. So HubSpot creates front office business software. So your sales team, your marketing team, your customer service team, you can run them all out of HubSpot. There's a CRM at the heart of it, and then marketing, sales, and customer service tools built on top of that. HubSpot is on a mission to help millions of organizations grow better. And as part of that, we have this little educational branch called HubSpot Academy. And we just produce free online business courses. So my charter personally is sales related stuff. My primary responsibility is to create training videos and courses that teach people how to use HubSpot's CRM and sales tools. But by extension, I end up teaching a lot of just sales best practices. And all of those courses are 100% free. We just want to educate the world and inspire them to change the way they do business. And that's a little bit about HubSpot and HubSpot Academy and my role there.
Fantastic. I do have to say to the audience out there, I would not be in the position I am in now if it were not for the HubSpot Academy. So all this free online learning and everything, I was able to make an entire career shift. So to you, Kyle, and all the other professors, I have to say a very public thank you for helping me out in that way. So if you were to tell your kids what you do, how do you explain it to them?
Mostly I tell them I make videos. And now that I work from home constantly, all they know is that I spend a long time at a computer and it's not very interesting to watch. And then there are short stints where I have a tripod set up with a camera and a lav mic and I'm recording stuff and they have to stay out of the room or be very quiet. And that's the interesting part that they want to touch and see and feel and be in. So,
Of course.
that's that.
When you have to stay out of the room, that just makes it more enticing. Let me see what's
Absolutely.
going on, what's happening. Oh, that is very good. So let's jump right into it. What's a pretty commonly held belief that you've seen in sales that you definitely just disagree with?
So we talked about this before the show. I don't remember which one I gave you, but I think I think a lot of the views in sales tend to be pretty extreme, right? Either
Okay.
people say cold calling is dead, or they say cold
Right.
calling is the only way to survive, right? Or they say, the only way to succeed is to invest in hired gun salespeople, right? You got to bring those in. And others are like, no, all salespeople are the same. You have to have a really solid process. And I just in in sales, as with all aspects of my life, I'm asking people to find a little a little moderation. Come somewhere in the middle. Admit that maybe it's not black and white. Admit that maybe there is variation here and there. And in my role at HubSpot Academy, I'm constantly encouraging people to find a more human and helpful way to do sales. I think that the days of high stakes, stiff arm, wrestling people across the finish line are over. There are some old school established industries that are still getting away with that, but that is not going to be the case long term. And I mean, it's all about transparency and just helping people come to a mutually beneficial outcome, right? It should be good for the company you're selling for, should be good for your customer. That is the metric of success. And there are so many other opinions and so many unique, like individual points people want to debate and get caught up on. But really, like if your customers are happy, and if your company is growing, then you're good at sales, right? And if they are unhappy, then you did something wrong, no matter how much money they're paying you.
Yeah, I definitely, there's so many, it's either black or white for so many cases that, like you said, cold calling is dead or cold calling is the only way to go. There's no, it's either or. There's no both and I think that's where you can be. And really, I like what you said about the metric. The metric is if your business is growing and your customers are happy. Guess what? Say it again for us. You're good at sales.
You're gonna say right, and actually, like those, as time goes on, those are becoming more and more synonymous, right? If your
Yep.
customers are happy, they will tell the internet they're happy. They'll tell their friends they're happy, and then you get to do business with those people too. But if your customers are unhappy, you can guarantee they'll tell the internet they're unhappy, and they'll scare away the other prospects, right? Like
Absolutely.
your outreach, whether it's however you do it, if people have heard bad things about your company, they're going to be really resistant to listening to what you have to say, even if you are the nicest, most helpful salesperson in the world. It's just that's the interconnectedness of modern society doesn't allow us to hide anything about our culture or our company or the way we operate. And so you've got to own that, and you've got to invest in making happy customers.
So, what do you think about if you get a negative review or something? What if that unhappy customer? Should you just close up shop? That's it. You're done.
You're done. Yep.
It's
No, actually,
everyone's
like
interconnected. I'm never gonna
I
make a sale again. What's
yeah,
your
I
advice there?
I think negative reviews are actually a huge opportunity. I think there is a tendency to be like the ostrich and stick your head in the sand and just, oh no, what are we? Hopefully we can get some positive reviews to drown this out. But
Right.
like honestly, if you can engage with someone in a really in a really positive, helpful way and show that you're invested in fixing problems, that can actually go a really long way for you. Just a sort of personal example on this. Um, one of the courses I created for HubSpot Academy is called the Sales Enablement Certification. That began as a research project. I just wanted to teach companies how marketing and sales departments should work together, which I didn't know the answer to. So I just interviewed a bunch of people at successful companies and pulled together the patterns I saw, right? And we launched it as a sales enablement certification because the patterns that emerged were all around content
Right.
and sales and marketing alignment and the sorts of things sales enablement people talk about. And I published it, and it's people have liked it generally. But when it first launched, I was crawling around the internet trying to find what people were saying about it. And I found the Sales Enablement Society, which is a fantastic online society, and I joined up, and I found someone had
Nice.
posted a thread like, "Hey, HubSpot had the audacity to publish this thing. Has anybody taken it?" And this guy, Corey Bray, who is now a good friend of mine, but I had never heard of at the time, just a furious all caps like, "This is garbage, right? This is
All
terrible."
caps. Oh
Um,
no.
and I was like, "Who is this guy?" And I looked him up, and he had written a book called The Sales Enablement Playbook. And I was like,
Oh.
"Ah, I see. Okay." And then I read the book, and it's fantastic. It's like one of the most readable, actionable sales books I've ever read. Um, and so I reached out to him. I found his email address and emailed him and said, "Hey, I read your book. I really liked it. Thank you. By the way, I'm the guy who made that course you lambasted, and I was wondering if you would help me make it better." And he was floored, right? He was like, "Oh my
Right.
goodness, I am so sorry you read that. Honestly, there were good things in your course.
Mm.
I just had some frustrations with it because of this and this and that. And
Caught him on a
I
bad
would be
day.
happy to work with you. I bet my co-author would be happy to work with you too." So I flew out to San Francisco and interviewed them, and they introduced me to some of their friends, and they introduced me to some of their friends, and it spiraled into this whole thing. And if you watch the sales management certification we now have, that's where that came from, right? A conversation with me and Corey Bray because of a negative review he left. And like that is, I remember I'm the guy whose wife proposed to him after a comedy show, right? Like sometimes life just works out really well, and I can't promise that will always be the case. But I think when people leave negative reviews, that's really valuable, right? And if you can
Mhm.
engage, especially in a public way, right, respond to their tweet or engage with their LinkedIn post or whatever it is, and say, "Wow, I'm really sorry we let you down. How can we make this better?" Um, I mean, they may just be a troll who's angry, right? And you've got to let that roll off your
Yeah.
back. But they might be a sincere person who has passion like Corey does. And like teaming up with Corey, he opened up a world to me that I would have had no access to, all because I was willing to say, like, "Hey, I value your opinion, want to hear more about this," rather than, just responding in all caps and, "Oh, how dare you? Do you know how hard I worked on this?" Which I think is the normal, healthy human response, right? But we got to reel that in
Right.
and
Right.
engage.
Well, I think there's something to be said for ego. If you had just put in all those caps in there and just said, "Oh yeah," and kind of trying to one up him, like you said, it never would have opened up so many doors. And so many of us who do participate in the HubSpot Academy and all those certifications that you put together, we wouldn't have been able to reap the benefits of that. So that's a great story. Is that in the? Now it's been a while since I've taken the management certification.
No,
Is
I
that in
actually
there? That story should
no,
be in there.
that's not shit. I feel bad on the one hand because I don't want to be like, "And here's Corey Bray, the guy who really hated me the first time he encountered me," right? But like, the truth is he's just super passionate and super knowledgeable, and it was sort of an oversight that I did not encounter his book or his work when I created a course called the Sales Enablement Certification, right? And but he was so excited to work with me, and I'm so glad, that we were able to make that connection.
Well, I think everybody loves a good transformational story or a good underdog story. So definitely include. I'm glad you shared that with us because that can really help us all remember, hey, it's not all about ego. We're all on a journey of some kind, and learning from others is the best way to go. That's I'm glad you shared that because I think too many people just, like you said, they just bury their what you call the ostrich in the sand.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't mean to present myself in any way as fearless, right? I am. I I recently went out on a limb and sent a fairly political email to some family members who are on a very far, like
Hmm.
opposite sides of the political spectrum from me. And when a particular aunt responded, I opened the email and asked my wife to read it to me while I literally hid under the coffee table because I could not face it, right? And like that's real, right? Like it's okay if it takes you a minute to catch your breath and be
Right.
willing to sit down and read it, right? You see that 0 star review or that 1 star review, and you know it's not going to feel good, right?
Right.
And I defy anyone to feel really good about receiving harsh feedback, right? Like there are those who are like, I am bulletproof, I embrace this, but like
Hmm.
honestly, like I don't think those people are human beings because it hurts to be told that something you made or something you did was bad,
Yeah.
right? And so it's okay if it takes you a moment. And in fact, I think it's good to take a minute, go
Absolutely.
for a walk, sleep on it, come back to it tomorrow, but do come back to it and engage in a positive, uplifting way where you can sincerely thank a person for sharing a perspective that you would not have heard otherwise.
And I think that when it comes to sales, especially that rejection, you see it all the time. You hear it all the time, and it could just be something as simple as, "Hey, this isn't a good fit," and that's it. But and yeah, you may need that moment, but take that moment because, like you said, it's a very human response. Were you really
Right.
under the bed when you're reading the email?
Yeah, well, and I mean that's I teach sales, right? I did have I've done sales, but like there's a reason I'm not making money doing sales right now, and it's because facing rejection is hard, right? And it
Yeah.
takes a certain sort of strength to be able to deal with that on a regular basis. And to tie this back to sales strategy and the stuff we've been talking about, I
Hmm.
think I think that's why we get so many unhappy customers, right? Because a
Right.
salesperson can't stand to let the deal go, right?
Right.
And they would rather be right in having opened the sales conversation than to do the right thing and say like, you know what? I've seen people in your situation before, and doing business with us did not work out well. So I think you would be happier um, doing something else, right? Like
Right.
that is
Hmm.
the thing that is very hard for any human to do because the feeling of rejection, our aversion to that is so strong.
Absolutely.
Um, but it's something we all need to learn.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's why, and I said this at the start of the show, but I think that's why the Academy is so helpful. The HubSpot Academy is so helpful, but in particular, your courses on sales, because sales is hard. And I think you break it down into an easy, repeatable process. I'm not saying sales is easy, but at least you shine the light on, hey, listen, look, this is a
Right.
good way to do this.
Well, and the truth about sales is it is hard, but for a lot of salespeople, it's hard for the wrong reasons, right? It's hard because the way their organization is structured is working against them. I had a sales job where I was it was at a SaaS company, not HubSpot, um, and uh, and it was a fairly early stage company, and one of the founders had literally run a script to scrape email addresses and phone numbers off of the internet from various like conference attendees and stuff.
Oh boy.
And I was selling like online tools for apartment complex management, right? And
Okay.
I would call people sometimes and they would say, "Oh, oh, 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 I live here. I don't own the apartment, right? I'm a renter, right?" And so like I was calling people I never should have been calling. And like I once this is horrible, but I literally called and asked for a guy who had recently died, and his wife who answered the phone
Oh
broke
no.
into tears. And it's
Oh
just
my
like
goodness.
no wonder people hate salespeople, right? And no wonder salespeople burn out because I burned out of that job. I
Hmm.
lasted, I think, 6 months in that environment, and it was terrible. And that was not me being a good or bad salesperson, right? We can't say anything about my performance. All we can say is that the sales process and the lead sourcing for that company was fundamentally flawed. And the company is still in business, and I understand it doing very well. So I assume they've gotten some of that ironed out because, like I said, it was early
Right.
stages. Like every
Right.
company has to go through this sort of like, oh, well, that was a mistake. We shouldn't have done that, right? I don't mean to
Right.
to judge that company or its leaders in any way because, in a lot of ways, I had a very good experience there once I moved to other roles. Um, but I think salespeople do. It's a grind. It's a hard job. But if you have a really solid sales process in place, if you know who are the right people to be doing business with, and if you have a really like a good inbound motion that is bringing interested people to you, then I won't say sales is easy because it's a high stakes, stressful game. Um, but it's hard for the right reasons, right?
Right.
It's an enjoyable challenge, as opposed to just being like knocking your head against the wall repeatedly.
Just being thrown out, sink or swim, good luck. And
Right.
after 100 calls, maybe you'll get better.
Right. And you hear like salespeople from the old days, right, before the internet, where it's just like, here's a phone book of your territory, good luck, right? And like that was probably not ideal then, but like that's crazy now, right? Because
Absolutely.
we have so much more information. We can target so much more effectively. We can make ourselves available to people who are searching for solutions. There's there's really no excuse for a totally blind approach. But that said, I mean, going back to my earlier comment of like, we can't talk in the extremes, like, don't say cold calling is dead. Like, sometimes the most helpful thing you can do is pick up the phone and call someone that you know you can serve well, right? Um,
Absolutely.
and so, like, rather than thinking about is this approach right or wrong always, just you really need to get to know your customers and your product, and like, if you're B2B, your industry, and do what will work best and serve those people best.
So creating a repeatable process doesn't mean it's a permanent process. I think what you're
No,
saying, you got to be flexible.
right. And I think that is a that's one of the most important things I learned from the Sales Enablement Playbook. To go back to Corey Bray, he and this does show up in the sales management course. It got
Right.
a long bit on process in there because it turns out that your sales process is the foundation to everything. And I think a lot of sales organizations they aren't skipping this step, right? I think every sales organization thinks they have a sales process,
Hmm.
but you've got to invest a lot of time and energy and research and data into getting that exactly right, because that's then how you're going to train your team. That's how you're going to choose who to hire. That's how you're going to do all these things, right? But I think getting that repeatable process is, even though it's a big investment initially, it's not ever written in stone. And in the Sales Enablement Playbook, Corey and his co-author Hillman talk about three categories, and I forget exactly what they are. One is thrashing, right? Where like, this is just not working.
Right.
But like, basically, the what they're trying to set up there is, you get a good process,
Hmm.
but then you constantly need to revisit it and make little iterations and adjustments and improvements over time, or sometimes big changes if you introduce a new product or you move into a new vertical or whatever. Otherwise, that beautiful, efficient, effective process will slowly deteriorate over time and become a liability instead of an asset.
If you're not shifting with your customers or shifting your process with your customers, then what do you have then?
Right.
And
Yeah.
I think definitely the shift that most people felt obviously was back in March of this year, that change became very apparent, and not only that, quick change. And so once I don't know if everything will ever go back to normal, but once things kind of settle down, I think that's good advice that you just offered right there. Just being able to sit back, and not sit back, but take a moment, and how can we adjust this process? How can we change this process so that we can serve our people better?
Yeah, and people love to talk right now about the new normal, right? Like,
Right?
we're not there yet, guys. Like,
Fair, nothing
there's
normal.
still kind of a global health crisis out there. So hopefully this is not the new normal, right?
There's nothing
But what
normal
I
happening.
Right. But what I really hope is that, fast forward to when things settle down and the
Right.
current crises we're facing are memories, right? And we have the opportunity to consider returning to the way we used to do things. I
Right.
really hope we take a moment to be really intentional about that, right? Like,
Right.
a lot of industries just assume you need reps out in the field, right? And
Hmm.
a lot of industries are learning right now, actually, we can do business without reps out in
Yeah,
the
we
field,
really don't.
But maybe there are some industries that are better served by having some reps in the field, right? And so, again, just avoiding these extremes. Once we get the all clear to have people out in the field again and traveling and doing these things without restrictions, um, look at that, right? Like, don't just think like, oh, we learned we don't need field reps at all. Like, we are going to be totally inside. Maybe that's the right thing to do, right? HubSpot only has inside sales teams and we're doing fine, but we're a SaaS company, right? Like, if you're selling something that needs to be physically installed in a location,
Right.
might be good to have someone walk around the location, right? But maybe don't assume you need as many outside reps as you previously thought, right? Maybe a really strong inside sales team could be there setting appointments and working out schedules. So those field reps are just moving from appointment to appointment all day and not doing any sourcing themselves or
Right.
whatever, right? Like the
The
point
sales
is,
support.
yeah, yeah. And the point is what we have here is a great opportunity to get rid of all our assumptions and build our sales organizations from scratch, right? But
Hmm.
what I'm worried we're going to do is we're going to say like, oh, this is a new normal, 100% inside, everybody working from home, and like,
Yep.
okay, right? Like we are surviving that way, great, all right? And for some companies, that will be the right thing to do,
Right.
But we just want the thing we're doing right now to be the right thing forever, right? And there is
Right.
no
Yeah.
part of our lives where that is ever going to be
That's right.
100% true.
Yeah, you can't just say, okay, it's that set it and forget it mentality. Here's
Right.
where we are. Great. We'll just keep going, repeat the process, and we're good. And there's one phrase that I hear all the time, and it's really, I have 3 kids in high school, and I hear this all the time. They have a hybrid approach to learning. They go to school 2 days a week to the actual, and we call it, it's today a brick and mortar day. Where they're going to the school, and then they have other days because the school is just too crowded to have everyone all at once. They have other days where they are online. And so this hybrid approach, I think, is probably going to be, maybe that's the term that that a lot of companies need to take a look at, instead of thinking, well, 2020 was kind of that was just weird, but we learned some stuff, but now that things are normal again in
Right.
2021, let's go ahead and just do what we used to do. I think there is definitely something to be said for getting rid of the extremes and getting into the hybrid.
Yeah.
That's
Well, and I mean to tie this back to the title Adventures in Sales Ops, right? Like
Oh,
I
you're
I am
good.
I am starting. I will tell the whole world right now. You heard it here first. I am starting to research ops very seriously. And I would really like to create HubSpot Academy content for ops people. If you are in an ops role, find me on LinkedIn. Let's connect and talk about what you do and how I can help with free online education. But like the as I have talked to people in ops roles,
Hmm.
which I've talked with several over the last year or so. I hear a lot of recurring themes. I when I first started on this journey, I would ask people like, "What do you do? Just give me the list of responsibilities in sales ops, so I know to make a lesson on process optimization, and one on territory carving, and one on compensation. Like, give me that list." And
How
and what
long
I
is
learned
that
is
list now?
there is no list, right?
Exactly.
The person at this company over here says, "Oh, carving compensation is like the main thing I just spend my time on," and the person over here says, "I never touch compensation. Oh, the finance team doesn't let me get
Right.
anywhere near those decisions, right?" And
Absolutely.
that's and what I've learned is these sales ops people, their role was defined because upper management had some sense like things aren't working as well as I want them to. I want a person to come in and fix it, right? And so they're like, "Oh, you person, you like making charts. You'll be good at this job, right?" And then it's suddenly their
Just don't
full-time
touch
role.
finance.
Right. And then I ask them like, "What are your roles?" And so often so many of them, especially at smaller companies, say like, "Well, they either say I just do whatever the executives tell me to do, or they say like I'm the professional problem solver, right? There's stuff
Right.
on fire all the time and I put out fires, right?" And like the world I would love to see us get to is one where the ops people are doing neither of those things, right? Where the ops
Exactly.
people
Yep.
are optimizing things and saying like, "Oh, I perceive that there is a pothole ahead, and we should put these things in place in an attempt to prevent it," right? And
Right.
and I think they so many of these professionals have that skill set, right? They have the brains, they have the data analysis skills. A lot of times they have the tools and software they need to do that, but then their whole day is taken up with like, "Hey, can you pull this report for me?" Or like, "Hey, there's a fire over here, can you put
Yeah.
that out?" And it's just
Make a
like,
chart.
can you make a chart? And like so many sales, this surprises me, like their role exists. So many sales ops people or operations people generally, they say like, yeah, they created this. I asked them, "What do you do?" And they're like, "Honestly, a lot of what I do is trying to convince the executives that they should keep me in this role, that it should still be a position." And I asked them, like, why did they create a role if they just want to get rid of it? And they're like, actually, I told them that they needed this role, and now my job is just to prove myself constantly. I was like, are you kidding me? It's the 21st
wow.
century. How can you run a company without operations, right?
Yes.
But that is the reality of the ops person. And so I think now, like 2020 is let's no bones about it. It's an abysmal year, right? We've all hated it, but like maybe this is the year that teaches us a lot, right? Like maybe when we're all old and we're talking to our great grandkids and our teeth are all falling out and they're like, tell us about the good old days, like we'll be able to say, we remember what the world was like before 2020, and it was kind of a mess, and it
Yeah.
sort of exploded, and now we have operations people and things go well.
Yes.
Right? Like I don't know for sure if that's exactly how we'll talk to our grandkids, but it just like I think there's a big opportunity here. Companies realize they have to pivot. Companies realize they need to challenge some of their assumptions. They realize like all the things that they believed in their hearts they could do forever, they can't do anymore. Right? And I really think it's the operations role that's going to help clear the dust and pull out the debris and build something new. And if those people are sufficiently empowered to do that, great things will happen for the world of business as a whole. I just don't know if those executives that are constantly, do we even need an ops person? Like, if they will allow that change to happen. And so that's something I'm waiting to see.
What I love about ops people is they tend to have an objective view. Whether they're bringing people in, an ops person, bringing them into an organization, they can objectively look at everything rather than someone that, and maybe this is the case for someone else, they raise them out of the sales team. And so there's a lot of kind of residual, we used to do things this way, in the sales team, in the pit and, when we were in the, grinding it out and all that stuff. But maybe objective sales operations is what we need to really go.
Well, and it's interesting too, just, to take it a level deeper or higher, whichever direction we're going, I don't even know. There's this idea of revenue operations that's sort of gaining some traction right now, right? And often sales operations is like the one operations role a company will actually have, because companies are invested in their sales team continuing to drive as much revenue as possible.
Nothing happens unless a sale is made.
Right, yeah, that stuff. And then so you get a sales operations person, and in reality, like their sphere of influence is big enough that they can establish things. Sometimes they're required to put systems in place for customer service. But then the marketing piece, like, because they came from the world of sales, they're just like, don't know what those people are doing over there. There's something about arts and crafts and websites and
making things pretty.
Right. Whereas from the HubSpot perspective, like, yes, branding and colors is a thing marketers do, but like there is so much more, right? And like an operations person should care deeply about their lead sources and these sorts of things. And so to get that holistic view, it's hard for someone of a particular background, whether they grew up in sales or whether they grew up in marketing or wherever they grew up in their career, to come in and see the business as a whole and understand that. And I don't know, like maybe it makes sense to have a sales ops person and a marketing ops person and a customer success person, right? Ops person, and maybe it, like, they all roll up to a COO or like, I don't know. Like, these are things I'm still trying to learn. But there's a lot of different ways to focus on operations in a company, and there doesn't seem to be one right way that applies from one company to the next, and that distresses me, right? Because I'm all about process. I'm all about best practices.
Just give me the template and fill it in.
Right. I think if we can abstract far enough, there are still some laws that must apply to the operations of businesses. Right. But once you get put in that business, there are so many specific things, like the individual people involved and the historical things that have been done, and like the customers you do and don't do business with. Like, it's just a lot, right? And so
maybe there's like like a sales op model. Maybe there's like 9 different models that are out there, kind of like attribute, you got the U shape or the W shape or something. Maybe you can come up with in your course some sort of like sales op shapes that, because I don't think you're going to be able to find just one that is, umbrella. I don't know.
Right. Maybe it'll turn out to be like a personality quiz, and like you are the here's a
Strength
four-letter
finders and
acronym to describe. Yeah,
your,
exactly. Like, you
your
are a
disc profile,
maximizer.
your ops profile.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a lot. So it sounds to me like you're pretty excited about putting together this academy course on sales ops.
Yes, I am, and I think it's interesting. I've been looking around for a couple years. So when I was working on, I think it was actually the sales management course.
Hmm.
I was interviewing a guy who was in a sales ops role. It was the first time I ever talked to a sales ops person, and he's like, "There's no degree for this, right? Like you just kind of make it up." And I was like, is that true? Is that really
Really?
true? And so I've been looking at the internet and it's true,
Hmm.
right? Like there are on Coursera, there are some specializations for sales ops, but like one of them is all about supply chain management, right?
Oh
And
wow.
another one was created by the marketing department of some university I've never heard of. And it's just
Oh
like
my.
neither of those really seems like sales ops, right? Like
Right.
they're both called sales ops specialization, but it's just like I don't think this is right, you know? And so I think there is a need and an opening in the market for this. But what I'm learning, because I had that conversation, I think back in 2018. So here we are 2 years later. What I'm learning is
Wow.
like maybe it hasn't been done because it's really hard, you know?
Yeah.
Um, but I think if we were to if I were to come on this show again a year from now, I bet I could talk in past tense about that one time I launched a sales ops course. Like I
There
bet
you go.
it'll happen. And I don't know what it'll look like, and maybe a lot of iteration will be required afterward to get it up to speed. But like the pieces are starting to emerge, and again, if anyone listening wants to talk to me about this stuff, I am here for it.
And when you're done, I'm going to ride your coattails right now. When you're done talking to Kyle, come on the show on Swimming with
Yeah,
Sharks and let's talk about your adventure. But you said it,
for
Kyle, I
sure.
definitely want you back in about a year. That was kind of my plan all along. So I
uh,
think that'll definitely be good. Tell me, let's get a little, not too personal here, but one of the things that you had mentioned was you absolutely, and it was like I, period, love, period, LinkedIn. What do you like about LinkedIn so much? It's the tool you cannot live without. That's what you told me.
Yeah, so this is I never would have thought this about myself even fairly recently. Um but I've never been a social media guy, right? Like
Mhm.
I think I joined Facebook finally in like 2015, right? And like
Right.
I was definitely the target demographic for it when it first launched. Like all my friends were getting on it and I
Right.
was just like,
Right.
what is internet?
What?
I don't know. But LinkedIn, I love LinkedIn because for one thing, the thing that drew me in is lots of people on LinkedIn post their HubSpot Academy
Yes.
certifications on
Yep.
it, right? And
Yep.
so
Yep.
that was sort of like the entryway for me. I would just search and see has anyone posted a certification I worked on, and then I would congratulate them, and then I
Any
built from
negative
there to
reviews in
like
all caps?
yeah, and then
Right.
I would like I moved from that to like connecting with them. And then I realized like, oh, people are really excited to be connected with me, right? Like, and
Right.
I can get feedback on my courses directly from the people who are actually taking them, right?
There you go.
And I can just like pretty easily post videos that I just film on my webcam to answer these common questions as they come up, right? And slowly I've been building this platform, and now like LinkedIn is just like that. I
Yeah.
am on it daily, well, week daily, we'll say. I try to take Saturday and Sunday off, but and I'm posting a lot, and I'm looking at what other people are posting, and I'm engaging, and I'm I don't know what they call them, and the instant message feature in
Right.
LinkedIn,
Yeah.
whatever they branded it as,
Messaging and
and
yeah.
messaging, and like I'm doing all of it, and so if you want to find me on online, that's I
That's where
mean
you go.
the main place to find me online, of course, is HubSpot Academy, but that's just me talking at you.
Right.
If you want to be able to talk back and we have like an actual conversation, LinkedIn is the place for that.
Absolutely. That's how this all happened. That's how Kyle got onto the show. I just simply we had a team meeting earlier this week. How'd you get Kyle on the show? I asked him.
Sim.
So,
Yeah,
and he said yes. So there you go. Tell me,
yeah.
yeah, it was so. We really appreciate you being here today.
No, I was just gonna say honestly, like my manager and I had a pretty uh, I don't know what a conversation recently about like maybe I'm saying yes to too many things, but she hasn't totally convinced me I should start saying no to people yet. So like, you know, here I
Well, good.
am.
I kind of got under the wire, I guess. I think that's kind of
Yeah.
maybe that's what you're saying here. That's good. Tell me about your just a couple more questions, and I'll let you go back to the family and everything. Tell me about what you thought of HubSpot's response to COVID, because I was pretty impressed with it. What did you see from your end as a part of HubSpot, the HubSpot Academy? What were your thoughts on how HubSpot responded to COVID and everything?
Yeah. So, I mean, we were all the whole world together, right? We were blindsided by this thing.
Yep.
And I remember like hearing about stuff that was happening across the Pacific Ocean and then like stuff that was happening on the West Coast and I'm on the East Coast. And then like suddenly it was like Boston Public Schools saying all your kids are going to be at home from now on and like HubSpot saying everybody's going to work from home from now on. It's just like,
Yep.
oh,
Wow.
it's oh, you know.
This is
And
happening.
so I remember just kind of this moment of like what's gonna happen, right? And I have always loved the leaders of HubSpot. Like our top brass, they're all excellent. But I was amazed how quickly they responded. Internally, for a while, we had I forget if it started out a couple times a week, and then it was weekly, and now it's
Mhm.
monthly. Just like Zoom based AMA sessions, right? Like at just we're here, we're the executive team. Like, what are your questions about COVID,
Oh
right?
yeah.
And
Right.
so like immediately internally they opened that up. And so they got a bunch of input from mostly frontline people like our support organization and our sales team about, HubSpot, like our bread and butter, the thing we've built our brand on is helping small and mid-sized businesses, right?
Right.
Like that is what we've always done. That is what we will always do.
Right.
And it was looking like early on they were all going to go out of business, right?
Yep.
And so I think where a lot of executive teams would have said like, how can we save ourselves, right? Like how can we enforce these contracts and send out collection agents to like make
Right.
sure
Right. Right.
we can keep the lights on? They said, how can we help? Like right, like I said at the beginning, our mission, HubSpot's mission is to help millions of organizations grow better. And like, how do we help people grow better when the world seems to be falling apart? And so they came up with several initiatives that were things like deferred payments and even like investing in some company. We prepaid commissions for some of our reselling partners,
Right. Right.
um, and there were lots of these AMA Zoom meetings where our executives are all like crying and all we frontline people are on and we're crying, right? Our cameras aren't on
Oh
so they can't see
wow.
it, but we're crying too because it's just like we are still here for our customers, right? We still care about our mission. This is not the point where HubSpot has to say sorry everyone, like we got to look out for our own interests.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, we have quarterly meetings where the executives always like, here's how HubSpot is doing, and like they are so transparent about it that every HubSpot employee is, as far as Wall Street concerned, an insider, right? Like we
Right.
have so much access to
Right.
financials, like
Mm-hmm.
they just tell us exactly what's going on, and for like every quarterly meeting in 2019, and I keep meaning to check, but like probably a couple in 2018 too. Our COO would get up there and put up some charts and be like, well, it's the longest bull run in stock market history. There's going to be a downturn sometime. We don't know when or
Oh.
why, but we are saving for this, right?
We're
Like it's
bracing
going to
for it.
come and
Yeah.
we're going to be prepared.
Mm-hmm.
And so when February, March 2020 hits, they were able to say, yeah, like this is hard. It's gonna be a long haul, but HubSpot is gonna bend and not break, right? We're gonna be one of those
Right.
flexible trees in the hurricane, and
Flexible.
and we're going to do as much as we can to help our other more flexibility in downgrading, so people don't outright cancel. They can just go to the free version, or like we temporarily moved some of our tools from our paid tiers down
Right.
so that they were more affordable. And like a lot of these programs are now expiring. Some of them we're evaluating whether we extend them or not. But
Right.
like
Mm-hmm.
through the heat of the moment in that most intense time, we really showed up for our customers and rallied around like how do we keep them in business, right? Because that's the long-term
Hmm.
play, right? Maybe we could send out the collection agents and they would squeeze out a few dimes, but then when
Right.
those contracts come due, are we're done,
Yeah,
right?
that's it.
And
Yeah.
and like the whole story we've already told the whole world about if you make unhappy customers, it'll become harder to do sales. Think of all the tweets and blog posts that'll be like, HubSpot was really invested in me until finances got hard for them, and
Right.
then they
Drop.
threw me to the wolves,
Yeah.
right?
They
And like
squeezed me and then dropped
if I
me.
was still in business, I would not do business with HubSpot, right? But
Yeah.
like the opposite is the case. Now we're seeing so many people who are like, I am still in business because I was a HubSpot customer, right? Like
Right.
I am still able to. One person shared that they were looking at a small company. I forget, like under 10 people, I think, and they were looking at firing one of their people, and then they got the news from HubSpot that we were, whichever program they were part of, I don't
Right.
remember, and they're like, oh, now this person gets to keep their job,
Yeah.
right? And just like this is great, right? And so
Hmm.
um, HubSpot has always talked in really idealistic tones, right? I
Hmm.
remember when I applied to work at the company back in 2015, I looked at our culture code, which has these 5 values, things like humility and empathy, right? And I was like, I don't think any company in the world actually operates this way,
Right.
but I want to work for a company that wants to operate this way, right? And now that
Ah.
I've been at
Hmm.
HubSpot more than 5 years, I can tell you, like, no, the reality is every single person at HubSpot is trying hard to live by those values. And I think the real test came in the first half of this year. And our executive team led the charge and rallied us around those values and rallied us around our customers in a way that I think is deeply moving. And it just like, okay, this is real, right? Like we are
Hmm.
really committed to this idealistic vision of the future, this belief that you can do business without selling your soul, which is like not a thing that is intuitively true to people in a capitalist society, right? Like you
Very
can
true.
be a
Hmm.
capitalist and care about human beings individially, right? Like that's
Both
another, like
and.
these extremes we talk about, right?
Yep.
Like
Yep.
that's not a freedom we give people for whatever reason, and
Right.
yet HubSpot is trying to show like, no, actually you can't do that. And I don't mean to say HubSpot's the only company in the world doing this. I think
Right.
COVID was really a good litmus test, right? Some
Hmm.
companies did awful things. Some companies just panicked and did nothing.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
and some companies really showed up for their employees and their customers in remarkable ways. I just talk about HubSpot because I had a front row seat for it, right? I
Right.
was
You
there. I
know.
got to
Yep.
be in these Zoom meetings where these decisions were made,
Hmm.
and I'm just happy every day that I have gotten to see this, because I mean, I consider myself a genuinely good and caring person. But if I was in charge of a company of 3 or 4 thousand employees,
Hmm.
I don't know if I would have been able to make the decisions HubSpot's executive team made, right?
Yeah.
Like those are hard calls, and they were by no
Absolutely.
means guaranteed to succeed. But early signs now seem to say they were the right choice, both from a humanitarian, humanistic angle,
Right.
and from a business approach. Like these companies that we helped, that we worked with, that we did not play mean tricks to when they were already down, are now lifelong advocates for us, and perhaps lifelong customers too. And that matters a lot. So
Yeah, it's one
it's
thing
paid
to
off.
write it down and put it in a code and say we live by it, but the challenge of a pandemic really shines the light on, well, do these words have meaning?
Right.
Do you live up to what you're saying you're going to do? And like you said, all signs look pretty good. So that's a good thing. That's a positive story coming out of COVID. I appreciate you sharing that with us, giving us a front row seat from your front row seat. So
Yeah.
thank you. So tell me about HubSpot Academy being international now.
Yeah. So
Give us some
yeah.
detail. I mean, I know what that means, but give us some detail.
Yeah. So, I mean, HubSpot is a Cambridge-based company. We have 7 or 8 offices around the world, but HubSpot Academy has always been located here in Massachusetts,
Hmm.
and we are all, English is our first language, like,
Right.
and if we got content translated, we would have to send it to like a third party vendor. They would translate it, they would dub it, and there was a time you could
Hmm.
see like videos of Kyle Jepson dubbed by some random Spanish speaking person, right? And the
Oh, that's gotta be
problem with that,
gold.
right?
YouTube
I don't think
gold.
any more are online,
No,
but
you can find it.
the real downside of that is that then if I update a video, which is hard to do anyway, right? Like
Right.
video, if I record my screen, I'm showing you here's how you set up your deal stages, and then that
Mm-hmm.
UI changes or a new feature gets added. The
Right.
only way for me to fix that is to completely redo the video. And then the only way
Sure.
for that to trickle down to the Spanish speaking HubSpot world is for us to pay that third party vendor to
Go
redo the whole
back
video
again
again.
and
And that
redo it.
costs a
Yeah.
lot of money,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so we had this situation where either we could have videos only in English, which is not ideal for an international company,
Precisely.
or we can have up to date videos in English and different out of date videos in other languages,
Ugh.
which is maybe worse. I don't know.
There's no continuity. There's
And there was just this constant struggle of like, I don't know how to do it. And so about a year ago, we our international like our team that focuses on internationalization had budget for to hire another person, and they, for reasons I don't understand, but I'm so grateful for, reached out to my manager and said like,
Mhm.
hey, can we give this head to you to hire someone to make HubSpot Academy content in Spanish natively? And we were like,
Nice.
that would be cool.
Yes.
And so about a year ago, we hired Juanita, who is based out of our Bogota office down in Colombia,
Mhm.
and she creates content natively in Spanish. And for the year she's been here, a lot of that is working through this backlog of taking all this English only content and all this
Mhm.
out of date dubbed Spanish content and translating it. But once she gets through that, like there is a world we could get to where she creates, content that is uniquely relevant to the Spanish speaking world,
Yeah.
or she creates content in Spanish that then gets translated in English for me to deliver, right?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so we did that, and then that showed early signs of success. So then we hired Tefan, who is a native French speaker, to do the same thing in French, and Lauren, who is a native German speaker, to do the
German,
same thing
right.
in German. And then just this week, just yesterday, October 5th,
Nice.
we hired Nozomi. She started at HubSpot. She lives in Tokyo, and
Oh,
she will be
fantastic.
putting our content into Japanese. And the thing that is so cool about this, as I've learned over the course of the last year since we've had Laura, and almost a year since we had Tefan, anyway, I forget the order. Juanita was hired first, then Tefan and Laura. But now, when I update a video, right, if something changes,
Mhm.
I can update it, and then I can send to them a marked up version of the script. We're building this single source
Right.
content management system where like I can update things and then send it to them and say, here's the one paragraph I changed, right?
Nice.
And then they are, I mean, you mentioned people at Inbound were happy to see me, and that is true, and I'm grateful to all those people. But like in the Spanish-speaking world, Juanita is HubSpot Academy. She does all the lessons, right?
Oh, wow.
And to the French-speaking world, Tefan is, and soon in the Japanese-speaking world, Nozomi will be, right? And so we are still producing all this content here, but then we send it out to them, and they do all of it, which it's a lot, right? I'm so impressed that they're able to do that. But the great thing is now I can update content constantly, and that just trickles down to them, and they can update their content, and it's continuity, right? We don't need to hire that same third-party voice actor to re-record a little bit, or a new third-party voice actor to redub the whole video. They can just do what I do, which is change the segment that changed and leave the rest the same.
There it is.
And so that is really exciting to be able. We have launched things this year in English, French, Spanish, and German simultaneously, right? Brand new content available in all those languages.
Wow.
Now that we have a Japanese professor, we'll be able to add Japanese to that list, right?
Absolutely.
And that's all the international professors we have set dates for planning. But I mean, HubSpot, the software, is now available in Portuguese, and I think in beta we have Dutch also.
Wow.
And so like maybe someday, I don't know when, I'm not promising anything here, but maybe someday we have a Dutch professor and a Portuguese professor. And then as HubSpot expands to other languages, which again, I don't have a timeline or any promise dates of that, but it seems reasonable that someday we have HubSpot in Italian, say, right? Then we get an Italian professor, and like whatever language you use HubSpot in, HubSpot Academy is there with you. And not just like translating right straight up, but like let's take out this American company we use as an example here,
right.
and pull in this lovely French company, right?
Exactly.
You know,
Something that's
and
relatable.
and make sure that we're not just translating word for word, but paying attention to those cultural undertones and you know, the context of what's happening in other parts of the world, so that HubSpot Academy isn't just this like American centric you
Right.
know
Mm-hmm.
phenomenon, which I think is huge, right? Like I'm good friends now over LinkedIn with a guy named Tomas, but he inbound a year ago, it caught me and had said, can we just record a quick video?" He's like, "Because my team, they say you're too American. They don't think you're a real person." And I tell them, I think in real life he smiles this much too, but I don't know for sure. And so we record
I
this
love it.
video, and it's just like, oh yeah, this is me. I am distinctly American, right? And I'm not going to apologize for that, but I recognize that if you are not from the same country as me, like I might be a very off-putting person, and I promise I'm not doing it on purpose. Um, and so that was nice, right? But as we get more of these
Right.
international professors, that will become less of a necessity, because I'll just be like,
Exactly.
oh, when I log into HubSpot Academy and I take a course, I see a person from my part of the world explaining things to me in a way that makes sense in my language and culture.
And the
And so,
culture is the important aspect there. I love that.
yeah,
That's fantastic. Well, of course you smile a lot. You used to be in a comedy troupe. I mean, come on. You know?
I'm a very happy person, Will.
Yes, I can see that definitely. Well, listen, Kyle, I really appreciate you coming on the show today. Hey, folks, if you want to get in touch with Kyle, help him out with this, help everybody out, the collective HubSpot community, help him with this sales ops certification that he's putting together. Get in touch with him on LinkedIn. He is pretty much there Monday through Friday, and
It's true.
generous with his time, obviously with the amount of time that he spent with us today on Swimming with Sharks. Kyle, thank you so much. This has been a real joy, and thank you very much for joining us today. We really
Yeah,
appreciate it.
thanks for having me. And I look back, I look forward, I guess, to being back in a year from
That's
now.
right. That's right. We're going to make it happen. Sounds good.
All
All
right.
right. We'll see you on LinkedIn. Thanks again, Kyle.
Yep. Bye.
Take it easy. Bye-bye. All right, we're going to wrap things up real fast. So let's take a look at the power play, everyone. The power play for today is the email signature template generator. And that sounds like a very long thing, a long word, but really it's put out by HubSpot. And if you just right after this, that's the intention of the power play. Go and Google this or HubSpot email signature generator, whatever. But this is what you need to do. It's a great little program in exchange for a little bit of information about you and your company and who you work for. You can get this very professional looking HubSpot, not HubSpot branded, but it's an email signature that you can put at the bottom of all your email signatures. And the reason why we're bringing this up is because you can put in a customized CTA. And we talked about CTAs at the beginning of this show, and it's important to have a good customized CTA so that every single email that you send out has the opportunity and shows some sort of way what is the next step for whomever you're sending that email to. So you can add in your social channels, but more than that, that customized CTA is important because every email now that you send with the email with this in your signature has an opportunity to show the next step. And that's why I think the power play for this week should be HubSpot's email signature template generator. And so let's wrap things up with a question for you. What's your best CTA? Let's share, let's have an exchange, let's figure out what is your best CTA. What gets you great engagement every single time? If you're a CTA professional, I want to know. Get in touch either on LinkedIn, through YouTube, put something in the comments on Facebook or on Periscope. Let us know what's your best CTA that never fails, that gets you some great engagement. And so, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate it. And so until next time, if you want to start a conversation, get in touch with me on LinkedIn get in touch with our agency, ManoByte, which is Mano is the Hawaiian term for shark. So shark bite. Get in touch with us here in some way, shape, or form. We really appreciate you being with us. And until next time, we hope that you take care of yourself and may all your adventures be great. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining us today.